So, Lance, in the world of AI, where do humans land? What is the human's role with content marketing?
It's a great question because I don't know about you, but every time I read an article about AI and they talk about AI will displace 300 million jobs in the next 3 years, I think, yeah, I'm kind of feeling that. I feel the pressure. I mean, do you feel the same thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just a Google search, and that's all you see is what's a writer like. I read an article earlier this week about writers turning to dog walking because they're getting displaced from their jobs. So it's
Yeah.
obviously something that I'm thinking about, something that we are thinking about. But I'm not necessarily terrified of it because I
Yeah.
think there are roles for us as humans, and there are roles for us as AI masters, essentially. Um,
Right. The way I think about it, so what you said is similar to how I think about it as well, which is every time a new technology throughout history shows up, it obviously displaces certain modes of work. So I disagree with the fact that it displaces people. It always displaces how people work.
right.
And so, as humans, what we love to do is feel really secure because we know how we work. We have everything under control. So, when we see all this stuff with AI that has rolled out in 2023, it's getting better and better over time. You start to feel that, oh my goodness, what I know is leaving, right? And especially when in our world, our whole work world is content marketing,
Right.
we're literally in the crosshairs of this technology. And so, yeah, you feel nervous, scared, like, okay, how does this actually work? Your first reaction, I'd assume it was your first reaction. It's my first reaction is to like discount it. I go, I can't be that great. They'll never be able to replace humans. I've looked at the technology, like we briefly talked a second ago, like what was the AI technology like in our estimation a year ago? I think you actually wrote an article
Yes.
about it, right? What was some of the takeaways that you had in that article? This was for the
Essentially,
old AI.
yeah, essentially what you just said is that it doesn't have the components that a human generated article has, a human written article has. And then fast forward to this year, to 2023, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that this AI generated document actually makes sense. The sentences aren't, just phrases with random punctuation and no thought. It's actually a complete, thoughtful sentence. So just the syntax is starting to work out. Are the ideas starting to work out too? And we read and we kind of play with AI a little bit and see that, yeah, it actually is making more and more sense. So, what can we do that's better than that?
Yeah.
Than what is out to be pretty good? And that's kind of what I'm interested in. I read
Right.
it. I read an interesting takeaway, and I never thought about AI like this. They compared AI, or they suggested comparing AI to that really, really smart, annoying writer who is really good at what they do, and thinking about them in that sense. And how can I, as a writer, write better than that smart, annoying creator over there? And I really appreciated that and that perspective because truly, that's now what we're doing is we're looking at somebody else, and it doesn't have to be scary if you think about it in terms of competition. Like,
Right.
what part of what I'm writing can I do best? Do I have the upper hand um,
That's really
against
good.
AI? So I thought that was kind of
You
a
know, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the thing that we all know intuitively is that we are each unique human beings. That's part of our advantage as being a human, right? Is that we're unique. But for the most part, throughout history, the way that we survive is by trying to be like other people. Like we try to fit into groups, right? We try to say the right things. We try to do the right things so that we fit in. And it's interesting because this technology in particular is highlighting the fact that the thing that will help you survive is your individuality, your
yes,
uniqueness, not trying to sound like everybody else. Because everybody else is being wrapped into this tool, AI, that obviously sounds like a pretty intelligent person because it's amassing the knowledge of, or not necessarily the knowledge, the language of a lot of people. So yeah, leaning into that individuality, I think, is probably a great place for us to start with how humans fit into content marketing, right? So like you said, and I like that, thinking of AI as a really smart writer, but kind of the obnoxious one. I I look at it, and I think I read somebody said this, and I was like, yeah, that feels right. It almost feels like a oh, I just forgot the word, which is terrible. AI wouldn't forget the word, but
We
a
might use a different one.
precocious,
Yeah.
like a precocious 11-year-old genius
Mm-hmm.
writing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you step back and you're just constantly amazed. Oh my goodness, how did you do that? And it's true, it's amazing, but I don't feel threatened by an 11-year-old precocious genius.
Right.
I think, well, I have a lot of life experience that
Exactly.
I could lean into here, right? So I mean, it's similar to what you're saying.
And I think that life experience, specifically when we talk about content marketing, that's so important because we're leaning into the expertise, the experience, the knowledge that our subject matter experts have to tell their stories. And if we can do that, AI can't. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
We aren't. We really don't have that competition when we're talking about things like case studies. Whatever experiences they're going to tell us and we're going to synthesize, you can't get that from AI. And I think that's something that's really exciting because as a writer, that's also one of the hardest things to not have when you're putting together articles. I can make generalizations based on interviews and research, but when I don't have that experience or that anecdote that comes straight from their perspective, it just misses for me. And having that and asking that, and as a writer, really drilling down into that for all future pieces that I do is really important to me. And I'm excited that AI has kind of brought that to the forefront that we need to do that in every single piece we do if we're going to stand out.
It's interesting. So technology forces us to think more clearly about what we do. Technology always does that because it usually it increases the floor, so more people get in on whatever you were doing technology wise. And so you have to begin to think like, how do I bring my strengths to bear here? And it's kind of like it's easy to settle for this article says what it needs to say,
Yes.
right? And I think what's happened is when you're dealing with AI, which is all about words, this is the part that I love about where AI is right now. I'm not saying it won't get there, but right now, AI is not knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
The AI doesn't know anything necessarily. And
Right.
this is the part that's I think got us really confused is it sounds like it knows an awful lot. And that's the part that gets us confused is when it says random things because it doesn't actually know anything. It's just learning patterns of how humans communicate knowledge, right? So it's gotten better at that and it's able to communicate what appears to be knowledge. And what that means is the value of saying things well, that's gotten diminished. I mean, because now a computer can do that easily. So now it's what do I need to do with this content to make someone feel something?
Yes.
Which that's great if you're writing novels or songs or poetry or cool stories from a journalistic standpoint. It's really hard when you're talking about saving cost in the cloud
Absolutely.
or for you writing about export compliance for
Right.
one of our clients, right? How do you make someone feel that?
Right. And what human exclusive emotion or thought can you pull from that world to make it make sense that there's not a robot thinking about this. And
Yes.
that's the challenge, but it's also, I think if we all start thinking that way, that is going to make our content so much stronger and make our subject matter experts and our clients really happy, because we can get the ultimate, like that's the ultimate benefit. You to have a client read something you wrote and just say, yeah, like that's exactly how I feel. Not necessarily what I think, but like that's how I feel about that.
Yeah,
So that could be
that's really
cool.
good. You know, it's really interesting to me too that the AI can approximate, like it can talk, and so it sounds like it's communicating feelings, but there's still just this level when you're interacting with it of you don't really sense what I'm sensing. And one of those human attributes that, for better or worse, we have is this empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've been in your shoes. I can kind of feel what you're feeling. And I think as a writer, if you can really channel that strength, that increases your effectiveness across the board, across all writing, right? Is thinking, how does the person feel when they're reading this? And that's, I mean, surely at some point, AI technology, they're going to hack through some of this other stuff. But I feel like at its core, this is something that we're going to have for a really long time, is our empathy.
Yes,
We know how someone else feels, and it's not just words.
absolutely. So, what do you think, as we look toward type of content that AI is not going to do well in? Where do you think we're going to find our strengths?
Right. Well, first of all, I can tell you where we're getting punched in the jaw right now, which is, a lot of our stuff is what we would call top of funnel content. So we're talking about how to do such and such, or, give me some facts about so and so. Unfortunately, because AI can go and grab all the words from everywhere, they do a really good job of summarizing. I say it. I don't know how to call it.
Yes, I get it.
Does a great job of summarizing things, probably more succinctly even than a lot of these articles that we've written over time, because again, it's combining the best that it can find around the web. So the type of content that we really think humans need to be involved in is what we would call middle of funnel or bottom of funnel. And I realize the funnel thing may be out of vogue now, but I think it still helps to imagine, like, we're getting closer to a transaction, which again, I'm not a poet. I don't write books. We're content marketers. And so our world is about, how do we create something useful? How do we create something that connects, that helps that person build a relationship with our client in hopes of doing business with them? So the middle of funnel, the bottom of funnel, this stuff is about like human connection. So I think AI is going to struggle with some of that, maybe for a while. I think AI is, and like, there's some other models that maybe latch onto this large language model where you teach it things about your company and then you turn it loose to use its words.
Yeah.
I think there's still a disconnect, though, and will be for quite a while, of things like, here's my personal experience with the software that you're researching, right? Here's my comparison between these two things that I personally did. Now, here's the fun thing that I think I'm actually very glad that technology is blowing this up, is it has been very, very easy for the last 10 years for someone to write here's an article of the 10 best widgets in 2022. And you start reading, you're like, man, this is super helpful. I love this. They've laid out this clear grid. And then you pause somewhere in the middle and go, how do they know this stuff? And then you realize that what they did is they researched, and they're copying all the pros and cons off of all the product websites. Mm-hmm. They're reviewing other people's reviews to see how people feel about it. And they've never physically picked up this widget in their life. I don't know about you, but at that moment, I almost get mad. Like, why am I listening to you about any of this? I can read all the same stuff you've read, right? Mm-hmm. So I think where we're headed is those people who want to generate affiliate dollars with their content, or they want to get ads because they're driving people to their website, are going to have to actually test the real products.
Yes, firsthand
And
experience.
it's not going to be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Firsthand experience is going to rise to the top, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to turn out things as quickly, right? Because, I mean, it's easy to hire contractors to go find 10 things, research it, write it, and that's fine. That model works currently. But I think where we're headed is it's going to take you 3 months of testing product and literally taking out and doing with it whatever it has been built to do, and then saying, okay, here's how it worked for me. And it's suddenly much more valuable, but it's also you put 3 months of work in instead of 10 minutes.
Absolutely. I want to go back to something you said earlier about teaching AI and training AI. What are your thoughts on how that might look for content marketers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are already softwares out there that essentially under the hood, they're connecting with large language models like OpenAI,
Mm-hmm.
other models. Google's got their own. And what they're trying to do is train that data or train those models on content from those companies. And that's really cool. And I think they're going to be able to do that. I actually have tested a little bit of this. And the challenge is that you have to feed a ton of data to a large language model to help it say the right things. The reason it's called a large language model is it takes a large amount of content for it to understand the patterns to generate something meaningful. And what we've discovered by just poking with this a little bit is that it is very, very rare for a company to have enough stuff to feed into these engines so that you get something useful. So where humans fit in to this, of course, is we get to train the bots. And we get to train these machines, if you will, to take all the things that we say and then hopefully use it at the right time in the right method, and probably more consistently than we as humans like to do, because we tend to get off script pretty quick. So humans should be involved in content marketing in this realm of you're going to have to actually create content for your company, how you think, how you present stuff, your sales process, your marketing process, how your engineers have even gone through and created these products or these services. It's going to be a huge human endeavor. And I don't see it stopping. So it's not like we're going to feed it data, it's going to take off and we never do anything more with it. I think it's going to be an ongoing process of humans saying, here's our stuff. Large language model gobbles it up. It spits stuff out and we go, this is good, this is bad, this is good. I mean, that's all training the data is incentivizing the algorithms to produce good stuff. So even with the way AI is right now, humans are still at least moving the joystick.
Right.
I mean, they may not be running the ship, but they're at least controlling things here and there. So there's a huge role for humans, especially in that internal content. And then, by the way, so a minute ago I talked about middle of funnel and bottom of funnel, and I talked primarily about middle of funnel and forgot to go to bottom of funnel. So the bottom of funnel for us and for a lot of old-timey content marketers means the stuff that you need to tell somebody when they're ready to give you some money or to sign something or to click on something. This is the stuff where we've absolutely got to connect as human beings. And I think we've skated by for a really long time on not having to worry about that too much. And now it is what will differentiate really effective content marketing from run-of-the-mill content marketing. And so that's involving your subject matter experts. So within a company, what typically happens is you got the people who know about things, right? And then you have the people who are the marketers who have been brought in to tell everybody how great your stuff is. And there's always been this really awful divide because if a marketer wants to sit down with an expert at their company, typically those experts are like, man, I'm already so busy. Why should I be helping you do your job?
Right.
And there's this huge disconnect, right? And the marketers are like, well, we kind of need to know what this is. And they go, well, here's a thing that we wrote about it 2 years ago. That's not helpful.
Right.
So where the bottom of funnel is going to be really revolutionized with humans is we're going to have to be able to access people across a company. So that's got to come from leadership that says, I need everybody within my company to be free with what they know, with opinions, with why we're doing what we're doing, not just the what and the how, but the why and the so what, right? Like, so how does this matter to you? If we can get to that at the bottom of funnel, I think you've got a really, really effective content marketing plan. Whereas if you're just relying on AI, I think you're going to see conversion rates drop. You're going to see stuff just sort of start to fizzle the closer you get to the bottom of funnel.
Love that.
I could be wrong. I have no idea, but I think that that's true.
We'll see, won't we?
Maybe. Yeah, I hope I'm around to see it. So let's see. What else are humans going to be important for in AI? What do you see?
I think that before we get to writing any content, we've got to understand the persona. And I think humans are still going to be number one in understanding and developing personas and then writing to those personas. Because I don't think, and I haven't seen, that AI understands nuance enough to write accurately to a very specialized persona. You can say write to kids or write to adults or use slang from a teenage point of view, but that's not going to be effective in middle of funnel and top of funnel or bottom of funnel content. So okay. I think I enjoy that part of thinking, okay, again, how is this going to be different? How is the person you're talking to different than who the world is talking to, a general audience? And I don't know that AI will be able to do that well soon. So if we can figure that out.
Yeah, and that really leans into that empathy thing again, right? Or the being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I mean, that's literally what an effective persona would be, is to say, I am trying to become this person that we're trying to communicate to, so that when I start to communicate, I'm talking to the right person.
Exactly. And I think for businesses, that's your challenge. You have to know who you're talking to. It's not incumbent on your marketing team or your AI to understand your audience. You have to be in charge of that, and you have to do that work, because when you do, everything is easier. Your content is clearer. Your content is more effective. You get better case studies. You get all of the information that makes really beautiful content when you know that first puzzle piece. And if you don't, AI just won't turn out anything good. But even your human writers will struggle. Mm-hmm. So I always go back to that building block of developing one good persona and really understanding that and working together with my client to make sure, I want to know what this persona eats for breakfast in the morning. Did they skip breakfast? Well, why? And from there, it just makes it so much easier to paint the picture from top to bottom of funnel sales. And I think that's going to be something that we can really capitalize on even more than we're doing now. And that will help with when we get to the bottom of funnel. We already know what they're asking, and we know the pain points. We know the reasons they're asking for things, which AI can't do.
That's good. You've mentioned a couple times case studies, and let's talk about that. Why does that seem to be a human thing? Why is a case study critical?
I want to know. I want proof. I do not trust what AI turns out implicitly. If I read a disclaimer that says AI was used in the creation of this content, I'm going to fact check everything. I'm going to second guess what I've read. Whereas if I read an actual case study, I implicitly trust that the story that they're sharing really happened and really came from them. And I still may do my due diligence in making sure that that lines up. But there's already a baseline of trust that you are doing what you say you're doing for customer X, so that you can probably do something similar for me if I'm facing a similar issue or pain point. And I think the more clients and companies are open with sharing their case studies, even if they're not huge, multi-million, billion-dollar case studies. If you're showing we had a customer with X problem and we solved it by doing Y, that's perfect. It doesn't have to be we solved all of their problems, but we solved this problem. Take that, put it in every piece of writing you do. Show your reader that persona that you've worked so hard to define. Show them repeatedly through your actual examples, that your sales team or the product you sell that you've encountered, and then use it, because AI can't make that up, or it can, but no one's going to believe it, and it will ultimately, hopefully, implode.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned we talked a minute ago about subject matter experts, and then you just mentioned fact checking within an AI article. So there's another way that humans need to be involved and have to stay engaged. You can't just generate something, put it out there, and take your lumps. There's got to be a human involved, and let's make sure that this is actually accurate.
Yes.
And what that's going to mean is almost like subject matter experts are going to have to get involved in two parts of the process now. So if you're going to generate something with AI with some prompts, you should already have some expert telling you what are the things that we need to be thinking about here.
Right.
Then when you get the material, you've got to actually run it through a fact check, probably your same subject matter expert.
Yes.
Right. So it's interesting because experts actually have become more important, not less important with technology.
Yes. And if you value that, if you value being an expert and being the best in your field, whatever your field is, that should be an invitation to you to find like-minded content marketing companies who are really keying in on the human expertise element.
Yep.
And work with them. Because if you care about that and they care about that, that's the perfect match. You're not going to get generic AI generated stuff that everybody's getting, may or may not be true. You're going to get the best human generated, but also emotive, effective content that's going to work for you for a really long time.
That's good. I think another aspect of how humans should get involved with this type of thing is essentially use AI as a debate candidate where you review what they say and then either poke holes in it, add to it, disagree. This is where I think a lot of experts who are talking about Google's SGE, their augmented AI experience, in search results, are saying you're going to get in the search results if you can provide added information, or in other words, something that Google hasn't seen somewhere else and believes that you're an expert in it. So instead of just, we're going to write a how-to article and here's a bunch of steps, it's almost like if you want to rank for that, now what you need to do is say, okay, here's what the rest of the world says, and here's where we disagree. And this is why this isn't true, or why this might be true in a specific case, but have you considered this case, this case, this case? Or this hasn't been true in our clients, going back to your case study thing. Here's what happened for our client in this situation, right? What I love about this is it makes us all have to be better. it makes us all have to dig in a little more instead of we need to write a how-to article. Here's an outline, write a how-to article. It's like, we've got to write a how-to article that says something new, which by the way is super hard to do.
So difficult, right?
We've got to say something in a compelling way, and we've got to say it in a way that sounds like it's unique to our voice, not just like everybody else. And that takes me around to something you just said a minute ago, which I totally agree with, and that is, you've got, in this market, the way AI is essentially reducing the value of words, if you will. You have to make sure that your words are unique to your company. I mean, we call that branding, right? We call that the messaging of your company. And a lot of companies kind of mess with that, and that's great. They use fun words, a little hip stuff, whatever. But you've got to know who your company is or wants to be and who you're trying to serve. And you better not try to sound like everybody else, because that's the only way you're going to distinguish yourself, is lean even more into your unique. It's like all the humans in your company are unique, right? That combination is unique. And that combination with your brand and your product and your service and all of these unique customers, this should create a unique approach to content instead of cookie cutter like everybody else in my industry.
Yes.
That it's one of those things, like I mean, you've worked with me for a long time. How long have we worked together? 10 years? 11 years?
10 years.
10 years. That's right. You just celebrated your 10-year Nectafy.
That's right.
You know that I hate being like somebody else.
I do know that.
If someone tells me I'm like somebody else, they might as well they've just ruined my day, basically. And so one of the things that has always irked me about content strategy or SEO strategy is that you spend a lot of time looking at what other people are doing.
Right.
At its core, that drives me crazy. I understand why we do it, because you're trying to understand not what you think about it, but what Google thinks about all those things that people are saying.
Right.
But what I love about this new opportunity is that there's like a game plan. And the game plan is, go figure out what other people are saying. That's fine. But don't say the same thing. You've got to find a way to turn it around. You've got to find a way to say, yeah, but you got to say, that hasn't been my experience. You've got to say, that maybe worked for you, but isn't universal. I mean, you've got to have something in there that makes it unique to you, which is going to benefit everybody.
Yes, you get, like, here is your license to be your own company and say what you wish you could say in a room full of your competitors.
Yeah.
That's what you need to be doing now.